Do you sometimes wonder how you could truly have an impact when it comes to diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging? How do you know you are moving in the right direction when it comes to becoming a more inclusive individual? As Diverse as Two Peas in a Pod brings topics such as ethnicity, genders, sexuality, or religion on the table. We talk about research and science, but also emotions, feelings, and vulnerability. We discuss allyship, advocacy, and privilege. But most importantly, we talk action. Because without action, we stay still. And when it comes to diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, stillness is never the answer. Welcome to As Diverse as Two Peas in a Pod.
In this episode of As Diverse as Two Peas in a Pod, I have the pleasure to welcome Marius Marza, with whom I discuss the topic of designing spaces that foster diversity, equity, inclusion and belonging. Born and raised in Romania, Marius has been supporting organizations to design their workspaces for almost 15 years. His experience has taken him through collaborating with a range of diverse companies, from small to large, across dozens of industries and in a variety of settings. Marius currently heads up the regional office for corporate office solutions and is the managing partner of Stable's office, not just a co-working space, but a service space that emphasizes collaboration and where businesses find the best environment to reach all milestones. Welcome to another episode of As Diverse as Two Peas in a Pod.
Welcome to another episode of As Diverse as Two Peas in a Pod. Today I have the pleasure to be doing it face to face, which doesn't happen very often. I think we're lucky to be vaccinated so we can do that. And in Cluj-Napoca, in the heart of Transylvania, where I live, and I have the chance to have Marius with me. Hi Marius, how are you doing?
Fine, thank you very much for inviting me. I hope I would be okay guest for your podcast, and I hope that the insights based on your question would be useful for your auditorium
for our listeners. Yes.
For our listeners. Couldn't find my word.
I mean, I'm really looking forward to this episode because I think it brings something a little bit different to some of the topics we usually talk about, and it's very concrete as well. So I'm looking forward to discussing more with you. But before we start and we dive into the topic, the first question that I'd like to ask is, what's your story? So Marius, what is your story?
Good question. What is my story? You told me about asking this one. So I'll start from where I am now, going a little bit back. So now I'm the regional director with COS. We are creating office spaces for organization. I'm responsible for Transylvania area and recently adding Iași. I started with COS almost 10 years ago, just as a simple salesperson, trying to find new opportunities in Cluj. And since then we grow extremely, and we have built many good and beautiful working spaces in Cluj and in Transylvania, because this is the region I'm coordinating. Before that, I was also doing office spaces, but only with the furniture part. Here at COS, we are doing turnkey solutions, or design and build solutions, starting from designing the spaces and after that building them, furnishing them, all this one. I'm happily married. I have a young child, Stefan. I thank you again for the beautiful giraffe you gave me when he was born. He still has it. He still has Sophie.
I'm glad.
Yes. So I'm beside the work I do at COS. Together with COS, we built a co-working space here in Cluj this is the location where we are in, and the setup we are having here, it's like a side project of mine. Wanted to record podcast. We didn't manage to do, so this is the first one. Hope it will go well. So we built Stables as a premium co-working space. We started operating it since September last year, and since then, even though the pandemic strike us, and especially office space is really bad, we have a good occupancy rate, and we believe that we find sort of a niche in Cluj for the co-working spaces, a premium solutions for them. But during the discussion, probably we'll mention some other aspects that we have here at Stables.
Definitely, and thank you so much for this introduction. And yeah, we've known each other for a while now, and we worked on different things together. But I'm glad we're sitting here talking about topic that is related, obviously, but a little bit different as well. And what I love about our discussion and what we're going to talk about today is we don't always think about the link between diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, and spaces, the environment. I think all know that the environment is important in those topics, but the physical environment is not something we always look into. So I'm glad we can talk about that today. And
just wanting to mention something really interesting. I got hired in COS in 2012, and Thomson's at that time was my first big important client, and the manager of Thomson's was Julian. So it was quite interesting over 9 years ago, more than 9 years ago, how we both developed and grow. And the trust you gave me back then, it really helped us, because we as salesperson are more successful with the success that we have, because it built our trust, it builds the fact that we can do more. So again, thank you for that.
And my pleasure. And I'm glad we're here today, moving on to talk about other things and still being in touch. So
yeah.
So as I mentioned, we will be talking about diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging, but around designing spaces. And one of the first questions I want to ask you is, when you're supporting your clients design their own workspaces, how do you ensure that the diversity of people is being taken into consideration?
So this question would have better been addressed to the architects, because they are the ones designing. I'm just the guy in charge of coordinating them. But I would say that diversity, it comes from the implementation of diversity. It's coming from the discussion we have with our clients about what is their gender profile of people. It's really important to know how you design the space based on the percentage, how many people are women, how many people are men. Starting with simple aspects like designing the number of toilets would need to be taken in consideration. Then when we talk about diversity, we talk about how easy is the space to be accessed by everyone. So for instance, here at Stables, I slide a little bit towards this one. Here at Stables, we design all the common areas and everything you would need. We have 2 floors. On one of the floors you can find all the functions. The other floor, it's an adjacent to this one, but all the common things, all the things that you need, it's happening on the ground floor. Because we are in an old building which is almost 200 years old. It would have been, and we are on a rented premises, and we could not have a elevator or a special built staircase for people to access the upper floor, talking about people in wheelchair, for example. That's why we designed all the functions to be present in the ground floor, like toilets for disability, the big conference room, the cafeteria, the work cafe, and private offices, dedicated desk or hot desking options. So this is another point which we talk about the client, about diversity of the people, and ease of access to the whole facility, no matter what your situation or who you are. When we talk about diversity, we in the initial design phase, it's also about the history of the company. How were their previous premises? What did work over there? What didn't work over there? How we can improve it? How we can keep what was working? Talking about with them about their teams, what their teams are doing the job, because in order to design a space you need to know their departments. They have a department of finance, which probably need acoustic isolation. They have a department of salesperson, which do not really access the space all the time, and they came like a hot desking, so they have everything quite easy to access rapidly, and they can start their work in 5 minutes after and entering the space. We also need to understand the company and how globalization affected that company. It's only based in Cluj, so then we relate a lot to do the local flavor, let's call it like this, or it's based all over the world. So design it in a way that when they have visitors, they don't feel like they coming into a strange place. They are coming in the same office which supports their work. So there are many things. What do we have put in place at COS? We have a questionnaire that I don't know if you remember, you completed it once or twice when we did the projects for Thompson's, where because a lot of times we are asking the client, can you give us a brief of the design, because to know which direction to take, and a lot of aspects aren't taking in the consideration if you don't have a framework. So by having this framework of questions, which every time with new things are being implemented. Recently, we have question about their COVID policy, about their type of work in the future, like hybrid work, asking all the people to come back. So there are many things. We just touch on a few, I guess.
And you're making a very interesting point here as well, I think, because when you were saying about, okay, when we ask someone for a brief, they might not know. And I think what happens when you create that structure, I think, and give people that brief that they have to fill in, you're removing, I think, a number of unconscious biases that we may have, because myself not maybe being in a wheelchair, or not being a woman, or not being from a type of job specifically, I may not always think about the things that are needed to create that diversity. And I think it's great that there is that kind of structure that creates a framework for everybody to have their needs taken into consideration. So I think it's a very interesting point, and a relationship we can make as well, probably with a number of other areas of the work environment, like recruitment, for example, or jobs where we have to think more about how do we make sure that we keep into account the diversity and inclusion and the variety and the diverse people that we have in the workplace.
Exactly. I think you summoned it really well. And by having this framework about which we developed during the years, it's doing exactly this, this unconscious bias that, or more or less than that, is the thing that you haven't thought about it. You know how your organization works, you know how your people are working, but from time to time you miss some points because they are just simple, normal, and you consider that this is how things are happening. So yeah.
And so another point that is very interesting that we discussed a little bit about in the past, which is core of diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, is the difference between equality and equity. And so equality, for me, is how we treat everybody the same.
Yeah.
Everybody gets the same thing, no matter who you are, where you are. what we want to aim for is equity, where what we're doing instead is we're recognizing that everybody's different and everybody has different needs. Even though we may start from the same place, actually we need to make adjustments to kind of I think realign these imbalances and these differences of needs that we each have. So how does that get reflected in the work you're doing?
So there are many aspects to take in consideration, knowing your people and your organization really, really well. On many cases, we don't get the chance to understand so well the complete organization. Mm-hmm. That's why we relate on the people who are transmitting us the information, which usually are the guys in charge of the facility, are HR people, are managers of the company, and so on. So they transmit these aspects. What I believe that equality would be in towards what is happening in the office or the workspace is more the adaptability of the space in order to suit the needs as they are requested. So yeah, we are when we talk about equality is also not only to the individual level but also to the team level, the group of people that are working on a specific task. So adaptability and flexibility in order for them to reschedule, rechange their space as they see fit, as they see that is needed for them. So when it especially related to the material things of the equality would be offering the flexibility, offering, for instance, I give you another example, height adjustable desk, which we have here at Stables, and we see a trend, more and more companies wanting this one. Yeah, it's very well, very healthy for the individual, but in the same way, you can adjust it based on your height. We are so diverse, so different. I'm 1.74 centimeters, so you are above 1.8. If we are talking about the standard desks, which is not height adjustable, it's a simple desk that fits the medium, the average. So the height of the desk, in order to fit very well, now is 74 centimeters. But maybe I need it a little bit lower, or you need it a little bit higher. That's why you can easily adjust it. Not talking about working while standing, which is quite easy. Also offering solutions for the chair in order to be user friendly, so you don't need to make many adjustments to it, because some people are not like that techy. They just want to go sit on the chair and the chair to adjust automatically based on their weight. So this is another important aspect. But all the thing in the space, when you're talking about equality, I believe it's again having various working situation. You need to work with your team to have available meeting room. You need to do private work. You need to have a quiet cell. You need to do a more relaxing work in a position that is not really office like sitting on a sofa or on an armchair and relaxing, or you want to be working in the cafeteria. So have everything over there to fit your needs. So basically, all in all, is taking to the word of flexibility. In order to have equality, you need to have this flexibility.
And I think, as you said, creating that flexibility then really appeals to every single individual's uniqueness and difference, and that's what makes the difference. And it's true. I mean, I love some of the examples you have. Especially the adjustable desk is such a concrete example of what you can do to really create that equity around the office, and making sure that every single individual with their own differences and what they bring to the work environment is being taken into consideration.
Yeah, and this is the simple thing. We can go into depth in many ways, but just this one can be, for one small thing, can be shown towards the whole office environment. And what I also want to say about, in order to ensure that your space would gonna give this equalitarian measure to everything, would be really good to involve your employees into designing the space, because most of the times we are talking, like I mentioned before, with the general manager, with the HR manager, with the facility manager, and so on. But we look at things at cost as those people, even though they are the ones signing the contracts and deciding if they work with us or with someone else, those aren't our clients. Our actual clients are the ones which are using the space we design, the space we build, the products that we furnish. So all this one, and if the times allows, we can do and go even more into depth doing workspace consultancy.
Yep.
In many cases, it doesn't. In many cases, we don't have the time because people leave for the design part just a short period. But some other companies which are thinking more towards their employees say, okay, I have the project of moving the space into a new one in 2 years. Next year, do for us a workspace consultancy. What that means, taking individual interviews with the people that would gonna use the space, see what their interest, what their request, what their needs would be, put them all together and draft it. This is a combination of architecture, but also with an aspect of psychology, sociology, so all these things. One of my friend, which is an architect, the lady who designs tables, after she became an architect and she has done many projects, she went to do the sociology university in order to understand better the needs of the person, and a lot of times read between the lines, because not always what you are saying is actually what you are saying.
And I think it's interesting as well here what you're saying, because as you said, people, I think, and organization quite often are rushing this process to make it happen because they want it as quickly as possible. But in the long term, probably it's more harming than actually is helping them if they had taken the time to really think about the space and how they can make it as inclusive as possible, because then they don't have to redo things. They have people who are actually feeling better in that space.
Exactly.
And I think that takes us to kind of the next step here, which is about a little bit more about inclusion. And so when we design spaces and we consider diversity, we consider equity, and although these two elements are very important, it can be at times a very kind of transactional and material thing. We talked about very concrete things right now, but when it comes to inclusion and creating an environment that is inclusive, that can be a very different challenge. So how do you see your work supporting that for organizations, supporting the inclusion of individuals?
So I don't believe that we as creator of spaces can be the ones responsible for creating the inclusion. We can just design the space and create the space so that the inclusion is fostered into the space. Because now we moved a little bit from the material to the not so material aspects that we are discussing today. So I believe that inclusion, it's important. The space needs to be created so it fosters it, but you cannot say that you have designed a space that is inclusive of everybody, because this is something more on how to say it,
On a
heart level.
Yeah.
Unconscious level. So, but we can do small bits and pieces. It's not really this aspect. We learn it a little bit from the part of managing a space. As we build stables. When we started with stables, we said that myself and Kos know how to design spaces, proven history. We know how to build spaces, proven history. And now we need to understand how we manage spaces, not really, and manage people, but not in the way to dictate what they are doing, but to create the complete mixture in order that they can perform the best and feel included into that space, into that community. What I believe about inclusion, especially in a co-working space, is to create common interests for the people, discovering them. I've told you earlier, one of the things which I believe in a way can create this inclusion feeling, maybe we'll apply it next year here in our community, is for the new member to create sort of a treasure hunt. But the treasure is not material one. The treasure would be knowing the other people. So doing the steps in order to know what the colleague from that office is doing, what are his interests, and in order to make it sort of, we see more and more this gamification. We always like it, and especially younger generation, younger than me and yours, they want to have this thrill of the game, because many of them grew with this gaming thing. So this is one aspect that we have thought about it, didn't apply it yet. Hopefully we'll have another conversation 1 year from now with this one being applied.
And I think just to stop you for a second, just to remind the listeners as well, I think one of the challenges you have, and where this idea comes from, is the fact that, again, we're in a co-working space. So you have clients here that rent an office, a desk, a space in here, and they don't know each other at all. So they're not part of the same company and the same organization in the first place. So it makes it even more challenging, I think, for the people to feel included, because they don't necessarily know the person who is next door. So I think this is one thing I just wanted to clarify with this example. I think it's a great example to show how do you include people that don't necessarily have that connection in the first place.
And their work is not connecting them, because we have a company who is doing transport and shipping. We have another company which is IT. In Cluj, you cannot have a co-working space without IT companies, and you have another lawyer practice inside the space. You have an e-commerce guy. You have a professor who is doing online courses. You have Kos here, because Kos is a user of the space who they design space and build space. So that is why it's really hard, because they do not work together on things. That's why we added some things to the space in order for the conversation between people to happen. I already showed you, and you have seen it, artwork. We believe that bringing artworks into the office is one of the most important things in order for the innocent conversation to start. Because what I like, probably you find disgusting, or you don't like it, or I don't know. What you like, maybe for me it looks strange. That's why when two people put themselves in front of an art piece, someone sees it differently. I want to explain him why I see it this way. He wants to explain me why he sees it this way. So I don't know if organizations are listening, and a lot are doing it, but I insist even more, bring artwork into the workspace. A lot of companies have this branding, big posters all over the place, and so on. You had it at Thompson's with the corporate logos, with this things about companies wanting to have the diversity, putting into a Cluj company a black person shaking hands with Chinese, but they aren't working over there, you know. So maybe shift a little bit and try to have this artwork inside the office.
And I think you're making two very interesting points here, I think, that I want to come back to. The first one is, as you said, and I think that's the bottom line, it's about creating those conversations.
Yeah.
To foster that inclusion. And then the second thing as well that you mentioned now is about how do you adapt yourself as well to your local environment and to the environment you're in? Because indeed, some people might not feel included here if we're showing them a community or an environment that is from maybe an office that they work with, but that is a few thousand kilometers away from them, because that applies to their community and to their environment. So indeed, that idea of thinking not just about how you create an inclusive space in the very global sense of the word, but an inclusive space that talks to the people locally.
From there, exactly. Maybe some companies are, and especially when you have a secondary office and the management decides for something that really works in the States, probably it won't gonna work so well in Romania. And that's it. That is when the local leadership team would need to get involved so that they communicated what is proper for the people here to be addressed in a way.
Very good indeed.
It's quite interesting talking about art. One of the pieces we are having here is done by an artist from Cluj called Radu Cioca. It's a sculpture. It's a work owned by Christoph, the owner of COS, and it's called 1 square meter of thank you. When we install it initially, we didn't told people what it's about. And a lot of them starting joking around it, saying, it's like funeral stones, big because it's on marble, I think. Yeah, it's on marble and it's sculptured over there saying thank you in Romania, mulțumesc. And some others were saying, you will gonna do now marble flooring and you have your pieces here. No, and this started a discussion, even though they were in a funny way or something like that. After that, we explained them what the work is about. They really understand it a little bit. And it was about like a thank you when the sculpture's second child was born, and it's related to the Romanian folk of building the churches, you know, when the people who paid for it it was mentioned there as a thank you for their donation and so on. So this is the same.
That's a very good example here of bringing the local culture with an element as well that enables people to really discuss about it and to have that conversation.
Yeah.
And actually talking about conversations, I remember as well another discussion you and I had with the two floors, and we talked a little bit about the accessibility earlier on. But I remember you telling me having the minimum amount of facilities like tea and coffee on the upper floor to kind of drive people to come down to the cafeteria, which is has a very kind of homey coffee shop feel to it as well. And it brings people together also to have those conversations, because I imagine you come in and you make your tea or your coffee and you're going to bump into each other and start talking.
Yeah, so here we needed to provide the minimal needs like water or coffee if someone doesn't want to come back because it's doesn't want to come down and they just want to grab a fast one. But it's nobody eats up there, nobody sits and enjoying the coffee, not drinking it while working. So everything it's on the ground floor and it's social. And everything like guest visitors, they are coming on the ground floor. Yeah, during these times with the pandemic situation, we restricted in a way the number of people being accessible, but it's the condition.
Yep.
Pretty soon, hopefully, also in Romania, this restriction would be lifted and people could enjoy normally being vaccinated and so on. But going more into depth, it's a beautiful example of something similar happening. We had a client here in Cluj. They had one floor, then another floor, then another floor. In total, like 4 floors they had. At one point, they said, our people are not meeting with each other because on each floor we design a beautiful, really with everything that they want, cafeteria. And they said, people are not meeting with each other. So what we have done, we designed a space on a middle floor. Half of the floor was the cafeteria. We still kept on each floor facilities for coffee and tea, but this company pushed their people to go all to eat in just one floor. And this is a way in order to, for the people, like you said, to bump in each other and start a conversation, find a common interest and develop it. Because I believe you feel included when you have in the space, in the organization you are working, people which are more, which share your interest outside of the job. Because inside the job, they need to share it. Because
and you're making a very good link here for my next question, I think, because we're moving now away from the differences and the uniqueness we each have, and we need to feel included in the bigger environment, to now how do we actually foster the fact that we are kind of the same as well, or at least we are part of that community, and as the belonging side of it. So again, we talked about diversity, we talked about equity, we talked about inclusion, and now we're moving towards belonging. So what does belonging mean to the work environment, in your opinion?
It's hard to relate it to the work environment. I would relate it more this feeling of belong. So I believe that the work environment needs to foster this belonging, but the feeling of belonging, you get it from the whole organization.
Yep.
What I mean from that is, for instance, we at COS are sort of speak your mind organization. So, and open doors to the CEO, to the manager, to the leadership team. Always. We have here at Stables and in the COS premises, no managerial office. We sit all together and we see the benefits of that. In Bucharest, in our headquarters, we have just one closed office for just one individual, but that office has the door 90% open. So it really shows that when you can go to the big guy in the company and he listens to you, this is a sense of belonging that you get. And more than this, it's a sense of where of the common goal of the organization. If the organization allows you to speak your mind about the aspects that are important, I believe you can relate to the same why of the organization. So this is aspects of the belonging that I feel are important. It's hard to say how you design a space that has belongings, because belonging, it's about the people using it, the space, and not really about how the space it is. Yeah, flexibility in mind would help with these aspects.
And it's interesting that I love how you phrased it as linking to the why, because I remember, I'm going to paraphrase you, and it's not from today actually, it's from a discussion we had a few weeks ago, where you said that belonging can only happen with spaces that go beyond the material aspect of the space. And I think it's a great way to kind of to summarize what you just said and this why, and it came from you, Marius, so it doesn't come from me.
I remember when we did, and I hope I'm right, when we did the space of Thompson's, when you were manager, you were sitting with the people. You then didn't have your closed offices, and this was the policy from UK where you had your headquarters. Nobody has the closed offices. It's the same with one of our main manufacturer, which we represent, Steelcase. All the global leading team is sitting with the people, and this you can see it how much it translates in their product offering. A lot of people are asking, but can you give us from Steelcase like some beautiful executive desk, this and that, and they have a bit in their portfolio, but it's like over there just to have the complete mix. It's not put in front, it's not insisted towards it. So this also says about an organization, about think that all the people belong to the same space.
Amazing. I want to ask you a last question, actually, which is what is maybe like a word of wisdom or one kind of nugget that you want to leave us with, or leave our listener with, when it comes to designing spaces that really foster that environment, whether it's around diversity, equity, inclusion, or belonging, any of those. What's the first thing that comes to mind for you that you would always want to share with people?
Would be that involved as many employees in the designing of the space. Not in the designing, in drafting the brief to find the needs. So involve the people that you have, how they want to see the space, involve and listen to them, and spend 3 times, 4 times, 5 times more time on the design phase than on the execution one, because you will execute a better space. And an important aspect, even though it's not the topic of the discussion, will cost you much less,
which ultimately is an important part of that discussion, actually. That's what the company wants, to have those end results, whether it's higher revenue or lower cost, is going to be something important. But I love and thank you so much for sharing this, because I love how effectively what you're saying is like bring that diversity and include people as early as possible in the process.
I didn't thought about it. You include them, you make them belong to the process of creating your space. Excellent.
Well, thank you very much, Marius, again.
I thank you for the conversation.
I loved some of these very concrete things as well that I think organizations can really put in place. So thanks a lot.
There aren't new things. There are things for a long time but some organizations think about it, some others do not think about it. We like to believe about ourselves as being, especially for Romania market, educators. In order, we bring a lot of knowledge from the many manufacturers we work from USA, from Western Europe, and we try to implement it here. And you know what is very interesting? A lot of the organizations, when they are building an office in Romania, are more open to beautiful idea. We recently done a space for a car manufacturer, an important one, which has offices here in Cluj, and their offices in Germany were like dolls, simple, strict, and here in Romania they were open to many suggestions. Thanks to the leadership team here and convincing the headquarters to accept this one, and we've seen some examples of taking what they implemented here back into Germany. So it's something really, really nice.
I'm glad to hear this place is a good place for trying out things and being innovative. Marius, thank you again so much for being my guest today. I really, really enjoyed our conversation, and I'm sure we can we could go even deeper with and be here for the next couple of hours. But there are so many really cool things already. So thanks a lot.
So we talked a lot, like 42 minutes. You can edit and take something else in order not to bother.
I think there are so many interesting things. We're going to have to keep everything. But thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please share it with others. Post about it on social media or leave a rating and review. We'd love to hear from you. To catch all the latest from us, you can follow us on Instagram, Facebook or YouTube at As Diverse as Two Peas in a Pod. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.